There is one thing people often notice too late. They think they are meeting different people, different names, different faces, different circumstances, different beginnings. But if they look a little closer, it is almost always the same person, just in another body. The same reactions, the same problems, the same feeling in the chest, the same uncertainty, the same waiting, the same hope, the same disappointment. And the strangest part is this: it never starts the same way. One person comes into your life softly, another appears suddenly, another one feels exciting, another feels safe at first, another feels like a coincidence, another feels like destiny. The beginning changes, but the ending, somehow, it repeats. And at some point, a question appears. Why did this happen again? And usually the answer is searched for outside. I was just unlucky. People like this always find me. Maybe this is just the kind of world we live in. Maybe love is supposed to hurt. Maybe I expect too much. But if something keeps repeating, it is no longer just bad luck. It becomes a pattern. And patterns are painful because they show us something we would rather not see. They show us that maybe the problem is not only who comes into our life. Maybe the problem is also what inside us keeps recognizing them as familiar. Carl Jung once wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that sentence is uncomfortable because it takes away one of the easiest explanations. It takes away the idea that everything simply happens to you. Because maybe you are not just meeting people. Maybe, in some quiet and unconscious way, you are choosing them, even when it feels accidental, even when you do not want to, even when you swear to yourself that this time will be different. And this is where the most unpleasant part begins. You do not always choose the people you truly want. You choose the people who feel familiar. And familiar does not mean good. Familiar means recognizable. Familiar means emotionally known. Familiar means your nervous system has seen this before. Familiar means you already know how to survive inside it, even if it hurts. That is why someone can say, "I do not understand why I am attracted to people like this." But often it is not a mystery, it is memory. You are not only choosing a person, you are choosing a feeling, the feeling they awaken in you. And if that feeling is familiar, your whole system may move toward it, even if it is painful, even if it is unstable, even if another part of you already knows that this is not what you need. Because the mind does not always choose what is best. Very often it chooses what is known. And the known can feel safer than the healthy, even when it is destroying you. Part 1. The familiar pain. The first thing to understand is that people do not repeat painful patterns because they are stupid. They do not return to old dynamics because they enjoy suffering. Most people are not consciously choosing pain. They are choosing something that once helped them survive. A child does not choose the atmosphere they grow up in. A child does not choose how love is shown to them. A child does not choose whether warmth is consistent. A child does not choose whether attention feels calm or unpredictable. A child simply adapts, and adaptation is powerful. If you grew up needing to prove your worth, you may later feel drawn to people who make you prove it again. If you grew up around emotional distance, someone cold may feel strangely attractive. If you grew up with instability, calmness may feel almost suspicious. If affection used to come after tension, then tension may start to feel like the beginning of affection. If love was something you had to earn, then being loved easily may feel confusing. Not because easy love is wrong, but because your body does not recognize it. You can know, logically, that you deserve peace, but your nervous system may still be trained to search for intensity, and this is where the conflict begins. One part of you says, "I want something healthy." Another part says, "But this is what feels real." And the second part often wins. Not because it is wiser, but because it is older. It was formed before you had words, before you had philosophy, before you could analyze yourself, before you could say, "This is a pattern." It was formed in feeling. And feelings are not easily convinced by logic. This is why a person can understand everything and still go back. They know the story. They know the ending. They know the signs. They know the silence before the pain. They know the apologies. They know the cycle. And still, when the message appears, when the person returns, when the old warmth shows up for one evening, something inside softens, and all the clarity disappears, because the body remembers, not the whole story, but the relief. The relief when they come back, the relief when they finally answer, the relief when they are kind again, the relief when they make you feel chosen for a moment. And relief can be mistaken for love, but relief is not love. Relief is what you feel when pain pauses. And if you confuse the pause in pain with love, you may become attached to the very thing that keeps hurting you. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Sometimes what you call chemistry is not connection. It is your nervous system recognizing an old wound. Sometimes what you call passion is not depth. It is anxiety dressed as attraction. Sometimes what you call, "I have never felt this before," actually means, "I have felt this before, but a long time ago, in a different place, with different people, before I knew how to name it." And when something old comes back in a new form, it can feel like destiny. But it may only be repetition. A familiar pain can feel like home, if home was never peaceful. And that sentence is difficult, because it explains why peace may not feel exciting at first. A stable person may not activate the part of you that is used to chasing. They may not trigger the old fear. They may not create the old hunger. They may not make you wonder where you stand. They may not disappear long enough for you to feel desperate. They may not come back just enough for you to feel alive. And because of that, you might mistake them for boring. But maybe they are not boring. Maybe your body is simply not addicted to surviving them. Part 2. Why intensity feels like love. There is a dangerous misunderstanding in relationships. People often think that the stronger the feeling, the more real it must be. If it consumes you, it must be love. If you cannot sleep, it must be love. If you cannot focus, it must be love. If your mood depends on one message, it must be love. If you feel high when they are close and empty when they leave, it must be love. But intensity is not the same as intimacy. Intensity can come from fear. It can come from uncertainty. It can come from scarcity. It can come from emotional unpredictability. It can come from not knowing whether you matter. And when a relationship is unstable, the emotions become stronger, not because the connection is deeper, but because the nervous system is constantly activated. You wait, you interpret, you check, you remember their tone, you reread their messages, you look for signs, you wonder what changed. You blame yourself, you hope, you imagine. You prepare yourself for loss while still trying to stay close. This creates intensity, but intensity created by fear is not the same as love. It is tension. And tension can feel addictive, especially when it is followed by moments of warmth. A person is cold, then they become kind. They disappear, then they return. They make you feel uncertain, then they reassure you. They hurt you, then they hold you. And your mind begins to connect the two, pain and relief, distance and closeness, fear and affection. Over time, this creates a powerful emotional rhythm. The relationship becomes less about love and more about the next moment of relief. You do not feel calm with them. You feel relieved when they stop making you anxious, and that relief becomes the thing you chase. This is why emotionally unstable dynamics can feel more powerful than stable ones, because stable love does not give you the same dramatic highs. It does not drop you and then save you. It does not starve you and then feed you. It does not disappear and then return like a miracle. It is simply there. And if you are used to earning love through anxiety, simply there can feel almost empty. You may not know what to do with a person who does not make you chase. You may even start creating problems where there are none. You may test them. You may distance yourself. You may look for hidden signs. You may feel suspicious of their kindness. You may think there must be something wrong, because peace is unfamiliar, and the unfamiliar can feel unsafe. This is why healing is not only about choosing better people, it is also about learning how to tolerate peace. Not enjoy it immediately, tolerate it first. Because if chaos has been your emotional climate for years, peace will not feel natural right away. It may feel flat. It may feel too quiet. It may feel like nothing is happening. But sometimes nothing is happening is not emptiness. It is safety. No crisis, no guessing, no emotional gambling, no waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just presence. But presence can feel strange when you have spent most of your life in pursuit. This is why some people leave healthy situations and return to painful ones. Not because the painful ones are better, but because they know who to be inside pain. They know the role. They know the script. They know how to wait. They know how to apologize. They know how to overthink. They know how to make themselves smaller. They know how to survive. But in a calm relationship, they do not know who they are. If no one has to be chased, if no one has to be saved, if no one has to be convinced, if no one is withholding love, what is left? This question can feel terrifying because it asks you to exist without the old role, and sometimes losing the role feels like losing yourself. Part 3. The role you play in your own pain. One of the most painful things to realize is that you may not only be attached to the person, you may be attached to who you become around them. The rescuer, the patient one, the understanding one, the one who never gives up, the one who sees their potential, the one who waits, the one who proves love through endurance, the one who says, I know they are difficult, but they are not like this all the time. The one who explains, the one who forgives before they are truly sorry. The one who believes that suffering means depth. And once you become this person for long enough, the role starts to feel like identity. You are not simply in a relationship, you are inside a mission. You are trying to be chosen. You are trying to be enough. You are trying to heal someone. You are trying to prove that you are different from everyone who left. You are trying to win the version of them that appeared in the beginning. You are trying to bring back the first feeling. And this mission can become more powerful than the relationship itself, because the mission gives pain meaning. If you are suffering for something, it does not feel meaningless. If you are waiting for a transformation, the waiting feels purposeful. If you believe that one day they will finally understand, then every painful moment becomes part of a story. But what if there is no transformation coming? What if the beginning was not a promise? What if it was only a beginning? What if the version of them you are waiting for is not hidden underneath the pain, but simply not available to you in a consistent way? This is hard to accept because it means grieving not only the person, but the story you build around them. And sometimes the story is what holds you, not the reality. The story says they are just scared. They will change. They have been hurt before. They do not know how to love yet. If I am patient enough, they will open up. If I say the right thing, they will understand. If I love them better, they will become safe. And yes, people can be wounded. People can be afraid. People can have reasons for the way they behave. But their reasons do not erase the impact they have on you. Understanding someone does not mean you must abandon yourself for them. This is where many sensitive people get trapped. They confuse empathy with responsibility. They think that because they understand someone's pain, they must stay inside the damage that pain creates. But you can understand why someone is the way they are and still admit that being close to them harms you. You can have compassion without becoming a place where someone leaves their chaos. You can wish them healing without volunteering to be hurt until they find it. This is not cruelty, it is boundaries. And boundaries are difficult when your identity has been built around being endlessly understanding. Because a boundary can feel like betrayal, not betrayal of them, betrayal of the version of you who survived by being needed, the version of you who believed that love means staying, the version of you who believed that leaving means giving up, the version of you who believed that your worth comes from how much pain you can absorb. But maybe love is not measured by endurance. Maybe love is also measured by truth. And the truth may be that some dynamics do not become healthy just because you understand them. Some patterns do not end because you explain them better. Some people do not become safe because you love them harder. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is stop calling self-abandonment devotion. Part 4. The hope that keeps you stuck. Sometimes what keeps you attached is not love, it is hope. Hope that they will change. Hope that this time will be different. Hope that the next conversation will fix it. Hope that they will finally see what you have been trying to show them. Hope that the person from the beginning will come back. Hope that all of this pain will one day mean something. Hope can be beautiful, but hope can also become a cage, especially when it keeps you invested in a future that reality keeps refusing to support. You may not be staying with the person as they are. You may be staying with the version of them you imagine they could become. And the imagined version can be incredibly powerful because it does not disappoint you. It always explains. It always improves. It always understands one day. It always arrives just beyond the next painful moment. The real person may be inconsistent, but the imagined person is faithful. The real person may hurt you, but the imagined person gives the hurt a reason. The real person may not choose you fully, but the imagined person will. Soon. Eventually. After they heal. After they realize. After they lose you. After one more conversation. And while you wait for that imagined future, your present life keeps paying the price. This is why it is so hard to leave. Leaving means you are not only leaving a person, you are leaving a possibility. And possibilities can be harder to grieve than facts. A fact is clear. They did not show up. They did not choose you. They did not change. They did not treat you gently. They did not protect your heart. But possibility says, maybe tomorrow, maybe if I explain one more time, maybe if I become calmer, maybe if I stop needing so much, maybe if I give them space, maybe if I wait. Possibility keeps the door open, and an open door can keep you standing in the same hallway for years. Albert Camus wrote about the absurd, about the human tendency to continue searching for meaning even when the world does not give it in return. In relationships, the absurd can look very quiet. It looks like knowing the truth and still waiting for a different truth to appear. It looks like reading the same ending again and again, but hoping the next page will change the book. It looks like calling pain complicated love, because the simpler name would require you to leave. And this is not stupidity, it is grief delaying itself. Because the moment you stop hoping, you have to feel what the hope was protecting you from. You have to feel the loss. You have to feel the wasted time. You have to feel the disappointment. You have to feel the fact that you wanted something real, and maybe it was not there in the way you needed, and that hurts. So hope says, not yet. Let's wait a little longer. Let's give it one more chance. Let's not call it what it is. But eventually, hope becomes harmful when it is no longer connected to reality. And one of the hardest questions you can ask yourself is, am I hoping because something is truly changing? Or am I hoping because I am afraid to breathe? That question is not easy, because it may show you that you are not waiting for love, you're waiting to avoid loss. And there is a difference. Part 5. Why you return even after you understand. The most difficult part of the cycle is not ignorance. Often you know, you see the pattern, you recognize the red flags, you can explain the whole thing to a friend, you can name the attachment, you can describe the dynamic, you can predict what will happen next, and still you return, or you answer, or you check, or you open the door again, or you let a small message become a whole emotional relapse. And then comes the shame. Why am I like this? Why do I keep doing this? Why can't I just be stronger? Why do I understand everything and still go back? But understanding is not the same as freedom. Understanding is a light, but freedom requires movement. And movement often means losing something you are not ready to lose. You can see the cage and still be afraid of the open air, because the cage is familiar. You know where the walls are, you know the rules, you know the pain, you know what to expect. But outside the cage, there is space. And space can feel terrifying when you have lived inside a cycle for too long. When the person is gone, the drama is gone too. The checking is gone. The waiting is gone. The emotional highs are gone. The low moments are gone. The hope is gone. The mission is gone. And suddenly, you are left with yourself. This is why people sometimes return, not because the relationship was good, but because the silence after it is too unfamiliar. They do not miss the pain, they miss having a place to put their emotional energy. They miss the story, they miss the intensity, they miss the possibility, they miss the version of themselves that existed inside the chase. And without it, life can feel empty. But that emptiness is not always a sign that you made the wrong choice. Sometimes, emptiness is what happens when your nervous system is detoxing from chaos. At first, peace does not feel like peace. It feels like nothing. Because your body is used to measuring love by activation. So, when there is no activation, you think something is missing. But maybe what is missing is not love. maybe what is missing is fear. This is why the first stage after leaving a painful pattern can feel so confusing. You may feel calmer and sadder at the same time. You may feel free and lonely, clear and nostalgic, relieved and guilty, stronger and more fragile. This does not mean you should go back. It means your inner world is reorganizing. The old pattern is losing its place, and you are learning how to exist without it. That takes time. Because you are not only leaving a person, you are leaving a way of feeling, and a way of feeling can become a home, even when it was not safe. Part 6. The fear of healthy love. One of the least talked about parts of healing is this. Healthy love may feel uncomfortable at first, not because it is wrong, but because it does not match the old pattern. A person who is clear may feel too simple. A person who is consistent may feel less exciting. A person who respects your boundaries may feel distant, even though they are being respectful. A person who does not play games may make you wonder where the spark is. A person who shows up steadily may not trigger the old urgency. And if urgency is what you have known as love, you may not recognize steadiness. You may think, why don't I feel obsessed? Why am I not anxious? Why am I not constantly thinking about them? Why does this feel less intense? But maybe that is not absence. Maybe that is your nervous system not being threatened. There's a kind of connection that does not burn your life. It does not make you perform. It does not make you beg. It does not make you calculate every message. It does not make you wonder whether you matter. It does not make your whole day depend on someone else's mood. It is quieter. And quiet love can feel small if you're used to emotional storms. But quiet does not mean shallow. Sometimes quiet is where depth can finally grow. Because in chaos, you are mostly surviving. You cannot build real intimacy when your body is constantly preparing for loss. You cannot be fully yourself when you're always managing someone else's distance. You cannot feel love deeply when love keeps arriving as a reward after anxiety. Healthy love requires a different part of you. Not the part that chases. Not the part that proves. Not the part that saves. Not the part that waits outside a closed door. It asks for the part that can receive. And receiving can be harder than chasing, because chasing gives you a task. Receiving gives you a mirror. If someone is kind without making you earn it, you may have to face the part of you that never believed you deserved kindness. If someone is present without games, you may have to face the part of you that only felt alive in uncertainty. If someone chooses you calmly, you may have to face the part of you that confused struggle with value. This is why some people sabotage peace, not intentionally, but because peace reveals what chaos kept hidden. In chaos, you focus on the other person. Why did they leave? Why did they change? What do they feel? What do they want? How can I fix it? In peace, the attention comes back to you. Can I let myself be loved without panic? Can I stay present without searching for danger? Can I stop testing what is safe? Can I stop turning calm into boredom? These are not easy questions, but they are the questions that begin to change your life. Because the goal is not to find someone who makes you forget your wounds. The goal is to become someone who no longer lets those wounds choose for you. Part 7. The moment the pattern becomes visible. A pattern loses power when it is seen, not immediately, but slowly. The first time you notice it, you may still follow it. You may say, "I know what this is," and then still answer the message. You may know it is unhealthy and still feel pulled in. That does not mean noticing failed. It means the pattern is strong. But the next time, something changes. There is a pause, small, almost invisible, but real. The person does the thing that used to hook you. They become distant. They send a vague message. They return after silence. They give you just enough warmth to reopen the wound. And for a second, you feel the old pull, the old hope, the old fear, the old excitement, the old urge to explain, to fix, to chase. But now, another voice appears. Wait, I know this feeling. And that moment matters, because before awareness, the pattern moves through you like fate. After awareness, it becomes a choice. Not an easy choice, but a choice. This is where change begins. Not when you feel nothing, but when you feel everything and still do something different. You may still miss them. You may still want to answer. You may still imagine the better version. You may still feel the ache in your chest, but you do not have to obey it. And that is the beginning of freedom. Freedom is not the absence of desire. Freedom is the ability to see desire without becoming its servant. You can want something and still know it is not good for you. You can miss someone and still understand that returning would hurt you. You can feel love and still choose distance. This is one of the hardest forms of maturity, because it destroys the romantic idea that love should always be followed. Sometimes love is real and still not enough. Sometimes longing is strong and still not wise. Sometimes the heart reaches for what the self must refuse. And that refusal can feel cruel at first. But maybe it is not cruelty. Maybe it is self-respect arriving late. Part 8. The empty space after leaving. When you stop choosing familiar pain, there is a space afterward. At first, that space may not feel beautiful. It may feel empty, strange, quiet, unstable in a different way. You may not know what to do with your evenings. You may check your phone without knowing why. You may feel the urge to create drama just to feel something familiar. You may miss the person most intensely at the exact moment your life becomes calmer. This is normal, because the body often craves what it knows, not what is good. And when the old cycle stops, the body asks, where is the tension? Where is the next signal? Where is the person I am supposed to wait for? Where do I put all this emotional energy? This is the withdrawal phase of a pattern, and it can be mistaken for love. You may think, if I miss them this much, maybe it means I should go back. But missing someone does not prove they were good for you. It proves they occupied space in you. And space does not become peaceful the second it is emptied. Sometimes it echoes first. The echo of their voice, the echo of the routine, the echo of the hope, the echo of who you were when you were trying to be chosen. And you have to sit with that echo without filling it too quickly. This is difficult, because the easiest way to escape one pattern is to enter another. Another person, another chase, another emotional high, another story that gives the nervous system something familiar to do. But if you do that too quickly, the pattern may simply change faces, and then the same lesson returns. So the empty space matters. It is not a punishment. It is a place of reconstruction. In that space, you begin to ask questions you could not ask before. What do I actually want? What feels peaceful to me? What do I tolerate because it is familiar? What do I call love because I have never known anything else? Who am I when I am not trying to be chosen? At first, the answers may not come. That is okay. You are not trying to build a new life in one night. You are learning to stop abandoning yourself in the old one. And slowly, very slowly, the quiet becomes less threatening. You begin to notice yourself again, your own rhythm, your own preferences, your own body, your own needs, your own boundaries, your own life outside the emotional weather of another person. And this is when the cycle starts to break for real. Not when you hate them, not when you feel nothing, but when your life becomes larger than the pattern. Part 9. Choosing differently. Eventually, a moment comes. Someone appears, and they carry the same old energy. Maybe not exactly, but close enough. The same distance, the same uncertainty, the same charm mixed with inconsistency, the same emotional unavailability, the same feeling that you have to earn your place. And the old part of you responds. It says, there it is, a spark, a pull, a feeling of recognition. But this time, you do not call it destiny right away. You pause. You ask, is this connection or is this familiarity? And that question changes everything, because now you're not only looking at the person, you're looking at yourself beside them. How do I feel in their presence? Do I feel calm or activated? Do I feel open or afraid? Do I feel respected or uncertain? Do I feel like myself or like a version of me that is trying too hard? Do I feel chosen, or do I feel like I have to compete for basic care? These questions are not romantic, but they are honest. And honesty is what breaks illusion. You may still feel attracted. You may still feel curious. You may still feel the old pull. But now attraction is not enough. Intensity is not enough. Potential is not enough. Chemistry is not enough. A beautiful beginning is not enough. Words are not enough. You begin to look for consistency, not perfection, consistency. Do their actions match their words? Do they treat you with care when things are inconvenient? Do they respect your boundaries? Do they make space for your feelings without punishing you for having them? Do you feel safe being honest? Can conflict exist without becoming a threat? Can closeness exist without losing yourself? This is a different way of choosing. It may feel less dramatic, but drama was never proof of love. Drama was often proof of injury. When you choose differently, you may disappoint the part of you that is addicted to the old story. That part may say, "This is boring. This is not enough. This does not feel like love. Where is the intensity? Where is the chase?" And you can answer gently, "This is new." That is why it feels strange. Because not every strange feeling is a warning. Sometimes strange means unfamiliar safety. Sometimes strange means your body is learning a new language. Sometimes strange means you are not repeating yourself. And that is where real change begins. Part 10. Love without losing yourself. Maybe the deepest shift is this. You stop asking, "Will they choose me?" And you begin asking, "Do I choose myself when I am with them?" This question is different. It brings the power back, because before everything depended on the other person's response. Do they want me? Do they miss me? Do they care? Do they see me? Do they regret losing me? Do they finally understand? But now the question becomes internal. Can I remain myself here? Can I speak honestly? Can I have needs without shame? Can I set boundaries without fear? Can I love without disappearing? Can I stay connected to myself while being close to someone else? This is what many people were never taught. They were taught to be chosen, not to choose. They were taught to be lovable, not to ask whether the love they receive is actually healthy. They were taught to keep people, not to notice what keeping them costs. So they become experts at adapting. They adjust their tone. They hide their needs. They wait longer. They ask for less. They forgive too quickly. They explain away disrespect. They call anxiety love because admitting the truth would require change. But love that requires you to leave yourself is not love in its full form. It may contain attachment. It may contain desire. It may contain history. It may contain tenderness. It may contain moments that were real. But if being close to someone means becoming smaller, quieter, more anxious, less alive, then something important is being lost. And maybe the point is not to find someone who completes you. Maybe the point is to stop entering relationships as someone incomplete. Not perfect, not healed forever, but no longer willing to hand your self-worth to another person's inconsistency. This does not mean you become cold. It does not mean you never risk. It does not mean you never love deeply. It does not mean you never feel fear. It means you stop mistaking fear for proof. You stop believing that love must hurt to be meaningful. You stop believing that being chosen by someone unavailable will finally prove your worth. You stop trying to win peace from people who only know how to create storms. And slowly, you begin to choose differently. You choose people whose presence does not make you abandon yourself. You choose conversations where your feelings are not treated as a burden. You choose consistency over intensity. You choose reality over potential. You choose peace even when peace feels unfamiliar. And at first, it may not feel like a cinematic love story. It may not feel like fireworks. It may not consume you, but maybe being consumed was never the goal. Maybe the goal was to be met calmly, honestly, fully, without having to disappear. Part 11. When the old person returns. There is one more moment that often tests everything. The old person returns, maybe with a message, maybe with an apology, maybe with nostalgia, maybe with a casual, "I was thinking about you," maybe with the exact softness you once waited for. And suddenly, the pattern wakes up. Your body remembers before your mind can explain. The heart moves, the chest tightens. The old hope opens its eyes. For a moment, it feels like the story is alive again. Maybe this is the conversation you needed. Maybe they finally understand. Maybe losing you changed them. Maybe the pain meant something after all. And maybe they are sincere. That is the difficult part. Sometimes people return sincerely. But sincerity is not the same as change. A person can miss you and still be unable to love you well. A person can regret hurting you and still repeat the same behavior. A person can cry, apologize, and say all the right words while still not having the capacity to create something safe. So when the old person returns, the question is not, do they still feel something? The question is, what is actually different? Not in tone, not in emotion, not in promises, in behavior, in consistency, in accountability, in time. Because the old cycle often begins again through a beautiful moment, a soft message, a vulnerable confession, a memory, a night where everything feels possible. But a moment is not a pattern. A moment can be real and still not be enough. This is where you must protect the self that fought to leave. Not with anger, with memory. Remember the whole story, not only the beginning, not only the good night, not only the apology, not only the version of them that made you hope. Remember the waiting. Remember the confusion. Remember the way you felt in your body. Remember the parts of yourself you lost trying to keep them. Remember how long it took to feel like yourself again. This is not bitterness. This is wisdom. Bitterness says nothing was real. Wisdom says some of it was real, but it was not enough to make it safe. That distinction matters, because if you need to hate someone in order to leave them, you are still tied to them through intensity. But if you can see them clearly, with tenderness and truth, then you are free in a deeper way. You do not need to destroy the memory, you just stop living inside it. Part 12. The deeper question. At the center of all of this, there is one question. Not, why do I always meet the wrong people? But, what part of me feels at home in this kind of pain? This question is not an accusation, it is a doorway. Because the moment you ask it honestly, you stop being only the victim of the pattern. You become the witness of it, and the witness has power. The witness can see, the witness can pause. The witness can choose. The witness can say, I know this place, and I do not have to live here anymore. Maybe you were not choosing the wrong people because you wanted to suffer. Maybe you were choosing them because they touched an old belief, the belief that love must be earned, the belief that distance means value, the belief that if someone finally chooses you, the old wound will close. The belief that being patient enough will make you safe. The belief that your worth depends on someone's ability to see it. And when that belief is unconscious, it chooses for you. It moves you toward people who confirm it. If you believe love must be earned, you will find someone who makes you earn it. If you believe you are too much, you will find someone who makes you shrink. If you believe abandonment is inevitable, you may be drawn to people who keep one foot out the door. Not because you deserve it, but because the wound searches for evidence. And healing begins when you stop giving the wound the power to choose your future. You do not need to become perfect. You do not need to be completely healed before you love. You do not need to never feel attraction to the old pattern again. You just need to become honest enough to recognize it, and gentle enough with yourself not to turn recognition into shame. Because shame does not heal patterns. Shame often sends you back into them. Shame says, you should have known better. Awareness says, now I can choose differently. That difference is everything. Part 13. The New Standard. At some point, healing becomes less dramatic than you expected. It is not a sudden transformation. It is not one final realization that makes you immune forever. It is a series of small choices. Not answering immediately. Not explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. Not chasing after emotional distance. Not calling inconsistency complicated. Not shrinking your needs because someone else finds them inconvenient. Not confusing potential with reality. Not betraying your own nervous system for the hope of being chosen. Healing is often quiet. It looks like closing the phone and breathing through the urge. It looks like telling the truth to a friend. It looks like admitting, I miss them, but I do not miss who I became. It looks like letting the body ache without treating the ache as instruction. It looks like allowing a stable person to be stable without trying to turn them into a storm. It looks like learning that calm is not the absence of love. It is often the ground where love can finally stand. And slowly, a new standard forms. You stop asking for the bare minimum as if it is a gift. You stop feeling grateful for small moments of respect from people who regularly hurt you. You stop treating basic consistency like a miracle. You stop building relationships around potential. You begin to ask for something more real. Not perfect love, real love. Love that has room for truth. Love that does not punish vulnerability. Love that can handle boundaries. Love that does not disappear when you need clarity. Love that does not turn every need into conflict. Love that does not require you to become smaller in order to keep it. And when this standard first appears, it may feel uncomfortable. You may worry that you are asking too much. But often you are not asking too much. You are only asking the wrong people. And when you ask the wrong people for what they cannot give, they may make you feel demanding for needing what is normal. This is why choosing differently matters, because the right kind of connection does not make you ashamed of having a heart. It does not make you apologize for wanting respect. It does not make emotional safety feel like a luxury. It makes it a foundation. Part 14. The Final Shift. And maybe, after all of this, the final shift is simple. You stop romanticizing the wound. You stop calling anxiety chemistry. You stop calling distance mystery. You stop calling inconsistency depth. You stop calling self-abandonment loyalty. You stop calling the chase love. You begin to see things as they are. And seen clearly can feel less poetic at first, because illusion is beautiful in a dangerous way. It gives suffering a glow. It turns waiting into devotion. It turns confusion into complexity. It turns pain into proof. But reality is quieter. Reality says, they are not available. This hurts me. I am not myself here. I have been trying to earn what should not require performance. I keep choosing familiar pain. I am allowed to stop. And when you say that, something changes. Not all at once, but deeply. Because the cycle does not break when you finally meet the perfect person. It breaks when you stop abandoning yourself in the presence of familiar pain. It breaks when you stop letting old wounds define what feels like love. It breaks when you can feel the pull and still choose your peace. It breaks when you understand that your longing is real, but it is not always wise. It breaks when you stop asking someone else to become the proof that you are worthy. Because you are not worthy only when they choose you. You are worthy when they do not. You are worthy in the silence. You are worthy after the ending. You are worthy when the message never comes. You are worthy when someone cannot love you properly. You are worthy even when your body still misses what hurt you. And maybe this is the beginning of a different life, not a life without love, but a life where love does not require you to disappear, a life where you do not need to be chosen by the unavailable to feel real, a life where peace no longer feels boring, A life where you can look at someone and ask, do I feel more like myself here or less? And if the answer is less, you listen. Not because you were cold, but because you have finally learned that losing yourself is too high a price for being wanted. And maybe one day, someone will come into your life who does not feel like the old pattern. At first, it may not feel dramatic. It may feel quiet, simple, clear, unfamiliar. And the part of you may wonder if something is missing. But if you stay long enough to listen beneath the old addiction to intensity, you may realize that nothing is missing. Something is finally absent. The fear, the chase, the constant uncertainty, the need to prove your value. And in that absence, there is space. Space to breathe. Space to be honest. Space to be loved without performing. Space to love without disappearing. And maybe that is what you were looking for all along. Not someone who recreates the old wound, but someone beside whom the wound no longer has to lead. And if you are not there yet, that is okay. The first step is not choosing perfectly. The first step is seeing clearly. And once you see clearly, you cannot fully unsee. The pattern may still call you, but now you know its voice. And maybe next time, when familiar pain appears in a beautiful form, you will pause. You will breathe. You will remember. And for the first time, you may choose not what feels familiar, but what feels true. Not what repeats the old story, but what allows a new one to begin. And that may be the moment you finally stop calling the cycle love and start calling yourself home. Extended reflection. Why the beginning feels so powerful. There's something almost magical about the beginning of a painful relationship. Not because it is always fake, sometimes it is real. The attention can be real, the tenderness can be real, the laughter can be real, the late night conversations can be real. The feeling that someone finally sees you can be real. And this is exactly why it becomes so hard to let go later. Because you are not only attached to the pain, you are attached to the memory of the beginning. The beginning becomes evidence. Evidence that they can be warm. Evidence that they can be close. Evidence that they can make you feel special. Evidence that there is something worth saving. So when the relationship changes, you do not immediately believe the change. You think the coldness is temporary. You think the distance is a phase. You think the inconsistency is stress. You think the person you met at the beginning is still there somewhere, waiting to return. And sometimes, maybe they are. But the question is not whether the beginning was real. The question is whether it is sustainable. A relationship is not built from the best week. It is built from the pattern that repeats. Anyone can be gentle for a moment. Anyone can say the right thing when emotion is high. Anyone can create closeness in the beginning when everything is new. But love is not proven by intensity at the start. It is proven by consistency after the excitement fades. And this is where many painful dynamics reveal themselves. The beginning gives you a glimpse. The pattern gives you the truth. But because the glimpse felt so powerful, you keep trying to return to it. You think, if we could just go back to how it was. But maybe the beginning was not the real destination. Maybe it was the door, and behind the door was the pattern. This is not meant to make you cynical. It is meant to make you clear. A beautiful beginning does not excuse an unsafe middle. A soft memory does not erase repeated pain. A good moment does not cancel a harmful pattern. You can honor what was beautiful without sacrificing yourself to what became painful. That is one of the hardest forms of honesty because the mind wants a simple story. Either they were good or they were bad. Either it was love or it was nothing. Either you were right to stay or foolish to believe. But human relationships are rarely that simple. Something can be real and still not be healthy. Someone can care and still not be capable. A connection can matter and still need to end. And when you understand this, you stop arguing with your own memory. You do not have to destroy the beginning in order to leave the pattern. You can say, yes, there were beautiful moments. And yes, I still need to choose myself. Extended reflection. The body knows before the mind admits. Before the mind admits the truth, the body often already knows. The body tightens, the stomach drops, the chest becomes heavy, the breathing changes, the sleep becomes restless. The hand reaches for the phone before you even decide to check it. The nervous system becomes alert. And yet the mind keeps explaining. Maybe they are busy. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I should not bring it up. Maybe I am asking too much. Maybe this is normal. Maybe I just need to be patient. The mind can build beautiful arguments around pain. It can defend what hurts. It can turn uncertainty into complexity. It can call neglect bad timing. It can call distance independence. It can call emotional crumbs progress. But the body is simpler. The body says, I do not feel safe here, and often we do not listen. Because the body does not speak in essays, it speaks in tension, in exhaustion, in a loss of appetite, in obsessive thoughts, in the inability to rest, in the feeling that you are always waiting for something to go wrong. And because these signals are uncomfortable, we try to think our way out of them. We analyze the relationship, we analyze the person, we analyze the message, we analyze ourselves. We analyze the past, we analyze the future. But sometimes analysis is just a more intelligent form of avoidance. Because the truth may already be simple. You do not feel safe. Not because you are broken, not because you are dramatic, not because you are incapable of love, but because the dynamic keeps teaching your body to prepare for pain. A healthy relationship does not mean you never feel fear. Everyone has fears. Everyone has wounds. Everyone brings history into closeness. But in a healthier relationship, fear can be met. It can be talked about. It can be softened. It can be held with respect. In an unhealthy dynamic, fear is often used against you. You are called too needy, too emotional, too intense, too complicated. And slowly, you begin to distrust your own signals. You start asking, am I really hurt or am I overreacting? And maybe that question itself is the sign, because in safe love, you do not have to constantly argue with your own reality. You may still misunderstand things, you may still need conversations, you may still have insecurities, but you are not forced to abandon your perception in order to keep the connection. This is why healing means learning to listen to the body again, not blindly, not impulsively, but respectfully. When your body tightens around someone, ask why. When you feel relief only after they return, ask what their absence does to you. When you feel addicted to reassurance, ask what keeps making reassurance necessary. When you feel like you are losing yourself, believe that something important is happening. The body is not always telling you the full story, but it is almost always telling you that there is a story worth listening to. Extended reflection. Why you explain too much. In repeated painful relationships, one of the most exhausting habits is over-explaining. You explain your feelings, you explain your needs, you explain why something hurt. You explain the same boundary in 5 different ways. You explain your tone, you explain your reaction. You explain why you are not asking for too much. You explain why consistency matters. You explain why silence affects you. You explain why disappearing and returning is painful. And at first, explaining feels hopeful because you believe the problem is misunderstanding. If they understand, they will change. If you say it better, they will care. If you find the right words, the relationship will become safe. But sometimes the problem is not that you have failed to explain. Sometimes the problem is that the other person is not willing or able to meet you there. This is devastating for people who believe love can be saved through clarity. Because clarity is powerful, but clarity cannot create capacity where there is none. You can explain the importance of warmth to someone who does not want to be warm. You can explain the need for honesty to someone who benefits from vagueness. You can explain the pain of inconsistency to someone who does not want responsibility. You can explain your heart perfectly and still not be met. And when that happens, continuing to explain can become a form of self-abandonment. Not because your feelings do not matter, but because you are offering your truth to someone who keeps showing you they are not holding it with care. A boundary does not need endless explanation. A need does not need a courtroom defense. Your pain does not become valid only when the other person agrees with it. This is hard to learn, especially if you grew up needing to justify your feelings. If your emotions were dismissed, you may have learned to make them sound reasonable enough to be accepted. You may have learned that being hurt is not enough. You must prove that you are allowed to be hurt. So in adult relationships, you keep trying to prove. You bring examples. You soften your language. You say, I am not trying to attack you. You say, maybe I am explaining this badly. You say, I just want you to understand. And sometimes, underneath all of that, there is a smaller sentence. Please care that I am hurting. That sentence is human, but you should not have to beg someone to care that they are hurting you. If someone can only hear your pain when you present it perfectly, then the relationship is not emotionally safe. Real care does not require a flawless argument. Real care can hear the trembling underneath the words. Extended reflection. The difference between patience and self-betrayal. Patience can be beautiful. Patience allows people to grow. Patience gives space for fear. Patience understands that nobody is perfect. Patience knows that relationships require time, repair, and compassion. But there is a point where patience becomes self-betrayal, and that point is not always obvious. Because from the outside, staying patient can look loving. You are understanding, you are forgiving, you are trying, you are giving someone time, you are believing in them. But inside, something may be slowly dying. Your confidence, your peace, your ability to trust your own needs, your sense that you are allowed to be loved without begging. Patience becomes self-betrayal when you keep waiting for someone to become kind while they keep benefiting from your waiting. It becomes self-betrayal when you silence your needs so the other person does not feel pressured. It becomes self-betrayal when you call repeated hurt growth. It becomes self-betrayal when the relationship only works if you stop asking for what matters. And this is one of the hardest lines to draw. Because nobody is perfect. People make mistakes. People have bad days. People shut down. People carry wounds. People need time. But there is a difference between someone struggling and someone refusing responsibility. There is a difference between a person who hurts you and repairs and a person who hurts you and expects you to adapt. There is a difference between slow growth and no growth decorated with apologies. There is a difference between patience and waiting in a place where you keep disappearing. The question is not, do they have reasons? Everyone has reasons. The question is, do they take responsibility for the impact of those reasons on me? Because love is not only about understanding where someone came from, it is also about noticing what happens when they arrive in your life. Extended reflection. When you start to trust peace. At first, peace feels suspicious. Then it feels boring. Then, slowly, it begins to feel like oxygen. You wake up and there is no crisis, no message to decode, no emotional weather to predict, no punishment for being honest, no need to earn basic attention. And for a while, you may not know what to do with that. You may feel restless. You may miss the old intensity. You may wonder whether calmness means something is missing. But if you stay with it, peace begins to reveal itself. Peace is not emptiness. Peace is the place where your body finally stops preparing for impact. Peace is the space where you can hear your own thoughts again. Peace is the quiet where your personality returns, your humor returns, your energy returns, your ability to care about ordinary things returns. When you are trapped in a painful cycle, your world becomes narrow. Everything becomes about the person, their mood, their message, their silence, their return, their approval, their distance. Your life shrinks around the question of whether they choose you. But when the cycle breaks, life begins to widen again. You remember friends, you remember music, you remember mornings. You remember what your room feels like when it is not filled with anxiety. You remember what it means to make plans without emotional chaos deciding your energy. And one day you may realize, I have not thought about them all morning. And that small realization can feel like a miracle. Not because you stopped caring instantly, but because your life is returning to you. This is the part people do not talk about enough. Leaving is not only losing someone, it is also returning to the self that was buried under the effort to keep them. And at first, that self may feel fragile, but it is there, waiting, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, like someone who never fully left. Extended closing, a different kind of love. A different kind of love may not arrive like thunder. It may not knock the breath out of you. It may not make you question your worth. It may not turn every day into a test. It may not feel like a movie. It may arrive quietly, through consistency, through honesty, through someone doing what they said they would do, through a conversation that does not become punishment, through a boundary that is respected, through closeness that does not require you to abandon yourself. And because it is quiet, you may almost miss it. You may think, is this enough? But maybe enough was never supposed to feel like panic. Maybe enough feels like being able to breathe. Maybe love was never meant to make you beg for clarity. Maybe love was never meant to make your nervous system a battlefield. Maybe love was never meant to prove that you are worthy by forcing you to win someone who withholds themselves. Maybe love, in its healthier form, does not ask you to disappear. It asks you to arrive as yourself, with your history, with your fears, with your tenderness, with your boundaries, with your needs, with your imperfections. And it does not punish you for being human. This does not mean it is always easy. Real love still has conflict, still has misunderstanding, still requires effort, still asks for courage. But the difference is that healthy love does not make you fight for the right to exist inside it. You are not constantly auditioning. You are not constantly waiting to be replaced. You are not constantly trying to become easier to love. You are met. And maybe, after so many cycles of familiar pain, being met feels almost unreal. But that does not mean it is wrong. It means you are learning a new home, a home where love is not a chase, a home where silence is not punishment, a home where distance is not used as control, a home where your feelings are not treated like a problem, a home where you do not have to become smaller to be kept. And maybe that is the real ending of the cycle. Not finding someone perfect, not becoming someone without wounds, but finally choosing a kind of love where your wounds are not the ones making the decision. A kind of love where you can be close without losing yourself. A kind of love where peace is not the absence of passion, but the ground beneath it. A kind of love where you are not trying to be saved, and you are not trying to save. You are simply there, present, honest, human, and enough. So if you find yourself repeating the same pattern again, do not begin with hatred toward yourself. Begin with curiosity. Ask, what feels familiar here? Ask, what am I trying to prove? Ask, what old wound does this person awaken? Ask, am I choosing love, or am I choosing the chance to finally win a familiar pain? And then listen, not only to the story in your head, listen to your body, listen to your peace, listen to the part of you that becomes quiet when something is true. Because somewhere inside you, beneath the old pattern, beneath the fear, beneath the hope, beneath the hunger to be chosen, there is a self that already knows. It does not always speak loudly, but it is there. And every time you choose not to abandon it, the cycle weakens. Every time you pause before returning, the cycle weakens. Every time you name the pattern instead of romanticizing it, the cycle weakens. Every time you choose peace over intensity, the cycle weakens. And one day, what used to pull you in will no longer feel like fate. It will feel like a memory you can honor. A memory you can understand, but not a memory you have to repeat. And that is when the story changes. Not because the world stops offering you familiar pain, but because you stop calling it home. You become the home. And from that place, you no longer choose out of emptiness. You choose from yourself. And that is a different life.